So I was getting ready for this talk. I was asked to talk about NEPA Simon, and I thought, we've been talking about NEPA Simon for a good couple of years, and Carlos and I and Lane and Lisa, we've all been going out, talking to districts, talking to the local governments, talking to anybody who'll listen about NEPA Simon. So what could be left to really talk about NEPA Simon? And then yesterday, I sat down and I was talking to somebody who I hadn't seen in a couple of years. I moved from the Houston district to Environmental Division about 2 years ago. And I hadn't seen this person in 2 years. And he said, "How's it going in Austin?" I said, "Oh, it's good. It's busy. We're really making some progress." He goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm pretty much 24/7 NEPA assignment." And I got this look like, okay. Like he had no clue. So it's obvious that maybe there's a few more people out there that still need a little briefing on NEPA assignments. So that's what I'm going to do. I've only got 5 slides for you, so it'll be short and sweet, and then we can move on to the next speaker. So how do I do this? Excellent. Yesterday I was watching Pat Henry's speech on the I-45 EIS project, and his clicker kept going. It kept going back and forth, and he's standing there, and everybody's anyway, so at least I got the clicker thing working today. That's a good thing. So what is NEPA assignment? Basically, NEPA assignment was developed by Congress to be a streamlining idea. And what it was to do is to assign the responsibilities for approving NEPA documents, NEPA decisions by the states. California took advantage of it back about 7 or 8 years ago, and they've been doing it now successfully for 7 or 8 years. Texas decided to start looking into it 7 or 8 years ago, but actually didn't get full in the game till just this past year. So what it does, it assigns the responsibilities from federal highways to TxDOT to approve and make the NEPA decisions. So Texas decided to take it as a two-step. We're a two-step state, so let's do it as a two-step process. We started out with a CE assignment, and CE assignment started in February of last year, and what that did was allowed all of the districts to approve their own CEs. So that was the first step in NEPA assignment. In the meantime, we were working on an application for full NEPA assignment, which would include EAs and EISs. And we worked on the application. It was posted in the Federal Register. We had comment periods. We did a lot of public involvement. We worked on an MOU and had several negotiations with Federal Highways on the MOU. And it was finally signed, and we began full NEPA assignment, which includes CEs, EAs, and EISs by December 16 of last year. So what are some of the benefits of NEPA assignment? It sounds great. Oh, it's a streamlining thing. We've heard that word streamlining over and over and over, and I'm sick of the word streamlining, because does it really mean we're actually streamlining anything? Well, for the old process, for those of you that aren't the environmental person, you just say, "Oh, when is this project going to be done? Who is my environmental person that's going to get done?" So you really don't know the little messy details of getting environmental finished. The way it used to work for EAs and EISs, you would have a document, whichever it was, an EA or EIS. You'd have it brought into your district. Your district would go back and forth with your consultant on getting all of it correct and the details. Then it would go from the district to E&V, and it would go the back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so you'd be doing the consultant, the district, E&V, back and forth, back and forth. Well, once E&V was happy with it, then it got sent to Federal Highways. So now you're doing the back and forth extra jump over to Federal Highways. So what NEPA assignment does, it takes out that last third of your review process. So everybody knows that environmental is, come on, when's it going to get done? When's it going to get done? And kind of known as the ugly stepchild, it's just environmental. And so what it does, it takes care of it kind of takes away that last third of your review process so that we can approve things at the state level and things don't get sent to Federal Highways. Some of the other things NEPA assignment does, it allows TxDOT to actually deal directly with federal agencies. So in the past, I know from Houston, we were working on Grand Parkway. We had some natural resource issues that we were dealing with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as Rob knows. And So what we had to do is we had to do our studies, we made decisions at TxDOT, then we would coordinate with Federal Highways, then Federal Highways would actually coordinate, they would be the lead agency to work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So with NEPA Simon, actually TxDOT now can work directly with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, other federal agencies, and it takes out that other player in the game, so it streamlines the process. So this slide you've probably seen before. It outlines some of the responsibilities with and without NEPA assignment. So before NEPA assignment, determining a class of action, which is whether you've got a CE, a categorical exclusion, an EA or an EIS, that was always discussed with your whoever's your sponsor, your district, ENV, and Federal Highways. Well, with the NEPA assignment, TxDOT can make that decision on its own. Before TxDOT, the state DOT would prepare your supporting technical studies and then forward them on for review. Your state would prepare your NEPA documents. You can see on here that with NEPA assignment, the state does everything. They do determining the class of action, preparing your documentation, responsible for your federal agency coordination. You approve and review files, NEPA documents. And then we are also responsible for defending any cases in federal court in case of a lawsuit. So the MOU, some of the basics. The MOU is, I don't know, Lane, how long is it? 30, 40 pages, something like that. Yeah. And it's got a lot of details in it that I bet maybe 5 or 6 people in this room have actually seen and read. Federal Highways expects everybody that's involved in NEPA assignment to have read it and know it page by page by page, because they can cite you verse for verse what is in the MOU. But some of the high points of the MOU are, of course, that the NEPA assignment responsibilities have been given to TxDOT. TxDOT reviews and approves NEPA documents, so TxDOT is approving EAs, EISs, those are being approved at the ENV level. CEs are all being approved at the district level. TxDOT agrees to maintain the financial capabilities for having the program, for having ownership of the program. TxDOT is responsible for educating everybody and making sure we have the required staff that has the abilities to take on the program. We have agreed to provide any files that Federal Highways wants in the MOU. We are given 5 days to provide any type of files or information, and believe me, they have their moments of saying, hey, we want to see this, and we all go, okay, well, let's figure out how to provide this for them in less than 5 days. So sometimes the requests are small, sometimes they're rather not small. TxDOT must also provide information to Federal Highways at the DC level. They, being a good national federal agency, Federal Highways has lots of data they collect. And one of the examples of data they were wanting earlier this year was when some of the new CEs came into play in the C22 and C23s. They were brand new CEs, and they wanted to see how the states were actually using those CEs. So we had to pull data together on how many were being used, how they were being used, why they were being used, if they were successfully being used, and then forward all that information on to DC. Some of the other things in the MOU, we have to carry out regular QA and QC activities. They're really big on QA and QC, although sometimes the words QA and QC get a little mixed up, and sometimes they don't know quite what they're asking for, but hopefully through conversation we can all get that cleared out. They want QA and Q regarding processes and project decisions. They want to look at files. They want to look at our program. They want to look at all the documentation we have out there for how to do the program. So all of the toolkits and handbooks out there that hopefully all of you are finding and using, they want to make sure that we've looked at them really thoroughly. Monthly, we give Federal Highways a list of our approvals and decisions. So this includes everything from what was called satisfactory for further processing, which means when you've got a project, say an added capacity project that is needing to go to a NAOPH or a public hearing, we have to report to them when we've made the decision to allow that document to go forward. We report all of our CE decisions. We report biological decisions. We report 4F decisions. We report EAs and EIS decisions. So the list every month usually is 300 or 400 decisions a month going over to federal highways. So we look at that and QA and QC it and send it over to federal highways on a monthly basis. We have performance measures built into our MOU, and they're the same performance measures that California has, and they will be the same performance measures that other states will have. We've been talking to Florida and Utah and Ohio and Washington. Washington State actually came down and visited with us for a few days about a year ago because they're looking at doing NEPA Simon. We've had several phone calls with Florida DOT. So Texas is, even though California got into the NEPA assignment game 6 or 7 years ago, Texas has been kind of the Lone Ranger going back out and doing it because it's been a little while since California got into it. And now that Texas is in the game, other states are wanting to see how we're doing it, how well we're doing it, what are the difficulties, and what they can expect when they take on NEPA assignment. So performance measures, part of it, the performance measures are looking to see how long it takes to do documentation and to complete documentation. The purpose of NEPA assignment is to get things done faster, and that was the whole streamlining initiative was to get projects done faster and through project delivery. So we are coming up with baselines on how long it takes to do CEs, how long does it take to do EAs and EISs, how long did it take to do them prior to NEPA assignment, and how long is it taking to do them post NEPA assignment. And honestly, our CEs were already pretty streamlined. We already had a great process. It was all electronic. We had forms for it. We are not doing documents anymore, which we used to do. We didn't have to send them over to federal highways to review documents anymore. So our CE process, you won't see a big change in post and pre and post NEPA assignment. But with the EAs and the ISs, you will be seeing significant changes because those time periods, that last third of your project development process where you're sending stuff over to federal highways and not stacking up and you're waiting for comments to come back on your project. We're not having to deal with that anymore. Part of NEPA assignment is developing good communication between the districts and the EMV division so that when projects come up for review and approval, people already know what the game is. They already understand what the project is. There does not need to be a big briefing on how did we get here already and questions to go backwards, so we can go forward and make good decisions. A big part of the MOU are audits, and Congress said, federal highways, thou shalt do audits for anybody getting into NEPA assignment, and that has been my hat lately, has been audit, and it will be for the next year and a long time. So what the MOU says is that we will have 4 audits of our program the first 2 years, and then we will have an audit annually thereafter for the next 2 years. That would finish out the last 3rd and 4th year of our MOU, of our contract. So what that means is we spent 3 months madly getting ready for an audit, and say in the first audit, Federal Highway sent us a list of 64 questions that we had to answer and send back to them as pre-audit materials. And the 64 questions weren't just 64 questions, it was 64 questions with A, B, C, 1, 2, 3s, so they had multiple subparts. So if you actually printed out the answers to all the information that Federal Highways requested during the pre-audit, you would have ended up with a couple of inches of paper for sure on the kind of information that they're asking. So we said we spend time pulling together all this information they're wanting. We spend time going out to the districts, visiting with the districts that are going to be audited. This last audit, we had the first audit was in April, the second one was just a few weeks ago in September, and Federal Highways visited 9 districts across the state, which was quite the travel episode for Federal Highways. They had 3 teams of 4 people, and they traveled to 9 different districts. And so we had to make arrangements for who they were going to visit with and what the room number was and what the time was. And it was a scheduling feat. It was a scheduling feat to get it all done. And then they came to Austin and they spent a morning visiting folks at EMV. And I think we counted up, there were 21 interviews that were completed the morning of the Wednesday morning during the NEPA audit week. So then you go through the audit and then you have a download of what we saw. Federal Highways tells you what they saw. And then we spend another couple of 3 months completing it. They send us the report, we look at it, we send them comments back. After a couple months, they send their draft report to DC. Eventually it goes through up the chain and it gets published in the Federal Register. They wait for comments, they answer the comments, then it gets reposted in the Federal Register. So our first audit that we did in April actually has not officially been completed yet because the final report has not actually been posted in the Federal Register. So you can see that just one audit is quite the extensive process, and going through one every 6 months causes a lot of overlap. And so it's a continual process that we're just going to be going through for the next couple of years to get all this on board. So what does Federal Highways think of this? We've got some common things that we've been identifying through meetings, through audits, that we're hearing from Federal Highways. They're very happy with what our training is doing. They are hoping that we come up with requirements, and they would like to see certification requirements for all of the environmental staff that are working on NEPA documents. One of the things that comes up often are EPICs, the environmental permits, issues, and commitments that y'all should be fairly familiar with. And they want to know how it is that TxDOT follows through from project development through project completion, construction completion, in following through all of our permits and commitments. And they want to know, how is that done and how do you communicate all that? And it's challenging, and every day we're trying to come up with a good way just to make that work. EMV has put together a team of people with some of the with district people to come up with a better plan on how to keep up with districts with the EPICs. What we're hoping to come out of it is kind of an EPIC management tool, so that we can look at whatever phase your project is in, we can pull up this tool and see what it is that we committed to do at that period of time. ECOS is our electronic management system that we use for all of our projects, and they have lots of suggestions for how we could improve it. We've been using ECOS now for about 4 or so years, and we've got a contract now to make some upgrades to it. And so they've made some comments on things they like and things they don't like about it. One thing they definitely do like is that it's electronic. Anybody in Federal Highways from across the country can get in and look at our files, whereby when they go to audit California, they're still doing paper files. So the auditors show up for an audit in California and they have to dig out all of their file folders to look through project files. And with Texas, they can actually go in and look weeks ahead of time before they actually show up at the offices to look at project files. We noticed that project files were actually being reviewed and looked at in August in preparation for our audit that we had at the end of September. So we know they're looking actively through our files. Project descriptions, it's come up on our audits that they like more thorough project descriptions. So those of you that listen to our NEPA chats, you will be hearing more about project descriptions. They've talked about relationships with the public, agencies, and local governments. They would like to see more enhanced relationships built and more communication happening. They really like our resource sharing that we do. They really like that, especially for our districts that are just 1 or 2 people teams out there, that if they don't have an expertise in something, say noise modeling or wetlands or finding some bird or some mussel in the creek or whatever, we've got people that can come in and help them. And they really appreciate that we actively do resource sharing. They think that our communication has improved greatly over the last few years. There used to be kind of a wall built up between the districts and EMV, and when I was in a district, you kind of sent stuff over to EMV, and it was kind of this, well, it's at EMV now, and that was the answer we gave to our consultants or our local governments, but we're really working hard on building up those relationships so that we work very, very closely together and understand what's going on so that we do not have those walls anymore. Carrie Brown is yeah, that's you, Carrie. Carrie Brown heads up our self-assessment branch, and that has proved to be an incredibly useful tool. What Carrie's group does is go through our project files after projects have a decision and looks through them to determine if we followed all of our processes and procedures correctly, if we've got our correct dates in ECOS, and if we have things that are perhaps not perfect, not exactly the way they're supposed to be, they identify them, and then we make corrective actions and go back and fix that. And what we've been hearing from the districts is that staff are really appreciative to the time that she and her staff are giving in one-on-one discussions with the people in the districts on how better to process your project and to fill out your paperwork and to make sure you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's. We've got a scope development tool that has been in process for a year and a half, about a year and a half, and it is the most magnificent tool out there right now for identifying what your project is going to be needing, whether it's a CE, an EA, or an EIS. You put in some information. It's a smart, what do you call it? A smart form. Thank you. It's too early for me. And you put in some information, and it spits out results saying you need to do historical, you need to do wetlands, you need a core permit, you need whatever, whatnot. And I think Mike's going to talk more about the scope development tool here in a little bit. So looking forward, yay, this is the last slide, guys. Training, as I said, Federal Highways is very interested in the training we're doing. They want continuous training. They've actually brought Federal Highway people from across the country to Texas for training events, and they see it as just really critical to the program to provide good training to our staff as well as consultants and local governments, anybody who actually touches the environmental process. So part of that, in addition to the training we're doing for TxDOT staff, we're going to be going out and developing some training or workshops for local governments, specifically looking at some workshops for local governments coming up here in the next year, probably after Christmas sometime, and doing training tools. If anybody out there is wanting to know more about NEPA Simon, please let us know, and we'll be glad to come visit with you, do webinars, do some kind of a lunch and learn if there's more information out there that you would like to know. Audits, as I said earlier, we are on this continual process of getting ready, having the audit, getting the audit done, starting the next one, looking at corrective actions, trying to find ways to improve our program. And then updated program materials. One of the things Federal Highways identified during the September audit is that we have put 31 new materials out there on the web in our toolkits to help people through the environmental process, whether it be a toolkit for writing an EA, for forms, what's the best way to write letters for public involvement. Our public involvement toolkit is updated. Natural resource things are updated. There's a whole slew of things that have been updated. If anybody wants to find the toolkits and the toolkit items, they're all listed by topic. So if they're listed by air or biology or by NEPA, by whatever your subject matter is. And if you just, the TxDOT website just may be a little confusing to get through at times. So if you just Google TxDOT toolkits, they'll come up, it'll take you right to it, and then you can pick whatever subject area you're looking for, and it'll help you through the process. And that's all I have. Anybody have any questions? Yes?
What kind of training is planned for the engineering side instead of the environmental side?
Right now we've got a group of graduate students working on they're working under a TTI contract, and they are putting together a basic welcome to NEPA Simon. What does it mean to me? Online kind of a PowerPoint training program that we thought would be best to get out to the engineering community, to management. We know that bringing a bunch of people in across the state, the state, it kind of feels like a country, it's so big. To say our environmental conference isn't always practical for everybody. So we want to be able to get the message out, because when Federal Highways does come out and audit, and if they come talk to you, they're going to be asking, what is your position with NEPA Simon? What are your responsibilities? Do you know what NEPA Simon is? And they're asking this of DEs, because DEs have to sign certain documents, as Delvin knows. So they come out and they ask those hard questions. So we need to make sure that everybody from the top down is trained on NEPA Simon and understands at least the basics of what it is and what your role is in the program. So we've got some folks putting together some PowerPoints that hopefully it'll be kind of like the other online training we do, is you go through and you read a little bit, and then you take a little quiz, and you move to the next part and you take a little quiz, and hopefully it'll be kind of interactive and not real boring, and you'll learn something, and then you can say, okay, I understand more about NEPA Simon. But if you're interested in some more one-on-one, and you would like, somebody to come to your office and talk about NEPA Simon, we're more than willing to come out to visit with you and do some kind of a half day or a lunch or something to get you more up to speed on what NEPA Simon's all about. Because it's really a huge program. It's a huge program from Texas. Everybody across the country is looking to see how successful Texas is in accomplishing this big task, and we are going to make it successful. We are making it successful. It's great. We're already looking at knocking off huge timelines on EAs. EAs average timeline is 3 to 4 years. Some of them are longer, but if you say an average EA is 3 or 4 years, we're looking at EAs being 1 to 2 years, and cutting off. That's a lot of time, especially when you're needing to get projects through environmental, and you're needing to buy right away and relocate utilities, because we know all that takes significant amount of time, and the longer it takes, the more money everything costs, and you want to get those projects let, and you want to get them out and constructed for the public. So let us know if you want us to come out and do anything more for you guys. We'll be more than happy.
Yeah. One thing I could add to that is especially if you're DEQC, the District Environmental Quality Coordinator is in, say, your construction office, not necessarily in the environmental section. That person has to have a full understanding of what the environmental process was and why those commitments are going to need to be carried through all the way through construction there. So those folks are for sure going to need that. Some of the folks in the construction office and the area office would have a lot of benefit from that as well. So I'd add that to what Sue had.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. It's really important to make sure we maintain that consistency and that communication across the board to make sure we get everything done completely and accurately. And so. Yes?
Are VCEs coming back?
No. No, a CE is a CE is a CE. So you go and pick from your list of options on CEs, and that's what we have to work with. Delvin.
Sue, the goal was always to get environmental clearance and to have a defendable environmental decision. So that's still the goal, but the goal now is to get it in a much less of a time frame. Outstanding. Has the program been running long enough to tell legal challenges to documents, whatever document it might be? Have you noticed a decrease, increase, about the same?
Well, that's one of our performance measures, is to make sure we don't have additional legal challenges beyond what our historical pattern has been. And the historical pattern has been about 1 a year. And since NEPA Simon has taken place, we have had none. So I can say we've had none this year. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yes?
Sue, a comment, 2 questions. First of all, congratulations. Wonderfully successful implementation of a very complicated issue. And I agree and can testify to the fact that it is a national issue, because the rest of the states other than California will follow whatever path TxDOT forges in this regard. So congratulations to all of you for the great work you've done in moving this agency in the state of Texas to this position. The 2 questions are, Delvin mentioned it, and you talked a little bit about it in your presentation, but could you just very briefly talk about the performance measures and what you're trying to learn from those to help continue to bring more value to the program as it moves forward? And then secondly, is there, and although it's early on, is there any conversation about having the ability states like Texas that have taken on these responsibilities to accelerate or to better integrate project activities. As an example, once the footprint's been decided for a project through the appropriate public involvement and environmental review process, but you're still looking at what are the impacts of that footprint, what are the mitigation requirements associated with all that, and you, for all intents and purposes, are beyond a no-build decision to an alternative selection beyond no-build to allow for early right-of-way acquisition, utility relocation, so that projects' delivery times can continue to compress. It seems like Congress and President Obama have been starting to say that they may have been a little bit too restrictive in those regards, and they'd like to accelerate project delivery. Are we having conversations with Federal Highway Administration and the environmental community about that? So those are the two questions.
Big questions. I did not bring a list of our performance measures with me. I can tell you that we have several, and the goal of performance measures is to make sure that we are maintaining an excellent program. And one of the most critical performance measures is to make sure we're getting things done faster and quicker, and make sure they're accurate and legally defendable and defensible, absolutely. So as we report these measures to Federal Highways and we find that we might be lacking in a few of them, it gives us areas where we go back and look at our program to identify places where we can improve, where we need more communication, where we need more training. So the point of performance measures is, one, to make sure that we are meeting the goals of the program, and we are decreasing the time needed to get NEPA approved so that we can get on to project delivery. But the other critical closing remarks, I'm almost done. The other critical part is to look at our program and making sure that if we have things that we need to adjust, that we can do that, and we can do it quickly. And we've got plenty of experienced people that are working on a daily basis to make sure that we can address things quickly and accurately to make sure that the program proceeds successfully.